We want the communication to break through to the consumer. If they don't listen to it, it doesn't matter what I think of the commercial. It's, what does the consumer think when they see it on TV?
Motoring 92 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.
This is the new 1992 Bonneville. Hello everybody and welcome to Motoring 92. Now Graham Fletcher test drove the Bonneville on an earlier program, but as you saw, this is the new supercharged model, the EI model. Fully equipped, it sells for about $35,000. And yes, it's a nice car to drive. But driving it can be very frustrating. In fact, let's face it, sometimes it seems like everybody out there is nuts. Well, believe it or not, Steve Grant has a story about some people who actually make a living out of driving like maniacs.
If you're over the age of 30, chances are pretty good you attended a Hell Drivers show as a kid. But unless you attend county fairs, the Hell Drivers are nothing more than a distant memory. High insurance rates and audiences weaned on police chases in the movies have all but made these live thrill shows extinct.
Well, this is my 39th year at it. Years ago I was racing stock cars and I wrecked my car in the early part of the season. Had no sponsor, had no money to fix it. So I went and I worked for the old Hollywood Auto Daredevils. And started off working for them 39 years ago, and it came full circle where 4 years ago the owner of the Hollywood Auto Daredevils was working for me.
Yes, it is dying off. We're the last one in existence in Canada. There's only one thrill show left in the States as well, whereas there used to be 20 or 30 of them in the States alone.
Why is it dying off?
My guess is television, movies. People see cars flipping and blowing up on TV and special effects and all that. This just doesn't seem as exciting as it used to be.
Paul Riddell and son Greg, better known as Coco the Clown, are entertaining a sparse crowd tonight at Varney Speedway. It's just one of 55 shows they'll play this summer in just 62 days.
My attitude's the same. Guy pays his admission. It doesn't matter if he's sitting alone or with 10,000 people. He's entitled to see a full show. And that's my attitude. But, I don't know. When you have a lot of people, it seems to, just get you going better. I guess just like in any sport, if you're playing to a small crowd, you don't get enthused. But if you're playing for a big crowd, like I played football many years ago, and when there was a big crowd, I always played a little harder.
Let's go, Fetty! Let's go! Let's go!
Back on that! Look careful, you're in trouble now. Oh boy. I would like to be in your booth, boy.
Let's go, Fetty! Hey, what's he gonna do?
What's he gonna do?
Let's go!
I got hurt once not too far from here in Hanover. I flipped a car end for end and they had to cut me out of it. I had to go to the hospital. I had 5 broken ribs, a badly dislocated shoulder, and my kidneys were perforated. And I was wearing clown makeup because I'm the show's clown. And the doctor in there didn't take me seriously and wouldn't give me x-rays or anything, just sent me home thinking it was a joke. And I had to go down the road to another town, I forget the name of it, and go into the hospital there to get patched up because this doctor wouldn't take me seriously, just sent me out.
The Ford Festiva. You see a lot of these cars on the road, don't you? Well, maybe not quite. This is what you call a little bit of a variation on a design, and I'm not sure our friends at Ford would appreciate it. Anyway, this is what you call making one great car out of 2 not-so-great cars. You see, Greg Riddell took a trip to the junkyard. A couple of weeks later, he ended up with this contraption.
What do you mean, no?
No way!
No way, what do you want?
I want a volunteer from the audience!
A volunteer from the audience.
Wait a minute!
What do you mean, wait?
I want a female volunteer from the audience!
Oh, a female volunteer. Every female who likes to volunteer.
Wait a minute!
Just a minute now, what's the matter?
I'm very particular lower.
You're very particular. How particular are you?
Well, she's got to be over 18.
Over 18, no problem.
And she's got to be younger than 72.
Younger than 72. Well, that's still no problem.
Well, she's got to have a great big sense of adventure.
Oh, gotta have a great big sense of adventure. Well, is there anybody like to volunteer like that? How about
Oh, yeah,
this?
she got
You got one right there? Okay, go bring her down.
I'll get her.
Don't go get her now. It will do your son.
I had an idea.
You have an idea. What's the matter? What are you doing? Coco, what are you doing? Oh,
I got
my
one.
goodness. Oh, well, that works, doesn't it? You got any other music?
I can use that for a double barrel slingshot.
Double barrel slingshot. What do we got 13 in? We want
It's
to
okay, he'll give it back to you.
Coco! What happened to your motor? Your motor?
Uh-oh.
Something wrong with your head, buddy? Get your baseball bat or something there. Quick before they hit somebody. Hurry up, get out there. Take a swing at them. Throw it all over there, too. Get your fire bucket, quick. Hurry up, get your water there, quick. Hurry up. You got no water. Hurry up, try to get some water, quick. Hurry up. Hurry up. There's no fire truck here. Hurry up, what are you doing? What are you doing, Coco? Coco, what are you doing? Oh, Coco, you got your water that way. Hurry up, into the car. Hurry up, it's going to burn right up. Oh, you still want to go for a ride in there?
Yes.
She does. Okay, go on, get in that car. Oh, no, Coco, no. No, you can't. Oh, my goodness.
You know, you think you know a guy. All the way up here on the drive to Varney racetrack, Robin is saying, you know, Steve, before I was a cameraman, I was a hell driver. Yeah, right. Well, due to insurance regulations, the Red Owls wouldn't let Robin drive, but we did the next best thing.
The pickup truck that drives on two wheels, what we do is we lock the rear end, weld the spider gears, so you get the same revolutions out of both wheels, so it could drive along on two wheels. Because the normal rear end, if you get it on two wheels, just the top wheel will spin, you'll get no traction on the track.
What is the trick to riding on two wheels? Obviously, you use a ramp to get up on two wheels, but what's the trick for staying up?
My father's done it for 39 years, and it's just practice. He actually balances it on two wheels by turning the wheel back and forth and raising and lowering the center of gravity on the vehicle.
Racing for a while, and then I just got into this year, though. So, the racing sure helped.
Here, who's next? You?
Focus?
Yeah, it looks good enough to me. You ready? Give her a kiss.
Thank you. It's the only makeup I've had in years.
Yeah, you tell when you wear more makeup than the girls. Where'd you go? I got a big run away.
They hate it when I do that.
During the pylon test, the car comes into its own, with each pass getting a little quicker. There is virtually no body roll and understeer is controlled.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at a car that is totally new for 1992. This is the Mazda MX-3 Presidia, a car that is rather unique in its own right.
Inside, the MX-3 is well finished, offering a complete range of power options. The front seats are well contoured, offering plenty of comfort and thankfully lateral support. The driving position is good, with all primary controls falling readily to hand. They have even included a very welcome dead pedal. The radio sits below the large slide-type heater controls, which puts the majority of the radio buttons very close to the end of my reach. The instrumentation is legible, although the information is somewhat limited. It only offers the 4 basic gauges and relies on idiot lights to monitor the rest of the vehicle's systems. The rear seats are unique, being formed right out of the car rather than having the conventional seat squab and back. It is awkward to access the rear, and once back there the amount of head and leg room is very limited. The seat back does fold, which is just as well because the trunk is on the shallow side, making the extra space very welcome. Loading and unloading items is fairly easy, although the liftover is on the high side despite the low-cut contour. ABS is a standard feature on the GS model. During the brake test, the 4-wheel disc brake setup provided flawless stops that averaged 114 feet from 80k. The ABS system allows the driver to get close to the threshold without intervening. When it does intervene, there is very little kickback felt in the pedal. This engine is what makes the Presidia unique. It is the world's smallest displacement mass-produced V6 engine. One thing that interested me about this, for any of you familiar with the old RX-7 engine, the rotary one, it had a very distinctive noise to the engine. Well, Mazda have managed to recreate that distinctive sound with a reciprocating V6. What makes the MX-3, as I indicated, is the 1.8-litre 24-valve quad-cam V6. This motor produces 130 horses and 115 pounds-feet of torque. On the skid pad we average 0 to 100k times of just under 9 seconds. At idle it is almost impossible to tell if the engine is running without glancing at the tach, and unlike many other engines which have a tendency to become rather raucous higher up the rev range, this engine becomes sweeter with every additional rev right up to the 7,000 RPM redline. To ensure a broad power band, Mazda have incorporated a variable resonance induction system, a technical sounding name for a system that essentially alters the length of the intake runners to ensure high air velocity in the intake manifold. This equates to good throttle response throughout the operating range. Matched with this engine is a slick shifting 5-speed manual transmission. Both it and the clutch are very easy to use. The suspension on the MX-3 is firm. In fact, my wife bet me that she could tell if a penny were heads or tails if we ran over one. Now that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but it serves to indicate that the ride comfort plays a definite second fiddle to handling. As is evident, during the pylon test the car comes into its own, with each pass getting a little quicker. There is virtually no body roll and understeer is controlled. The suspension itself is fully independent using McPherson struts up front and Mazda's twin trapezoidal link system in the back. Anti-roll bars back and front complement the suspension, ensuring a flat attitude is maintained in hard cornering, and the sticky low-profile tyres provide a sure-footed feel. My pet peeve on the Presidia has to do with a couple of items with the rear-end styling. Now, first of all, this very wide B-pillar creates a bit of a blind spot during lane change manoeuvres. Secondly, the rear spoiler limits your rearward visibility. Now, to try and overcome this, they've inserted a see-through plastic piece, but it's occupied pretty much by this third high-mounted stop lamp. Anyway, now to the scoreboard for a rundown on the 1992 Presidia. The free-revving V6 is a real joy to drive. Not only does it provide ample performance at just under 9 seconds to the 100k mark, it also feels and sounds exactly like Mazda's rotary engine, an experience I recommend you try if you haven't already done so. The suspension is firm and as such offers superior handling characteristics. Body roll is all but non-existent and the amount of understeer kept in check. The 4-wheel disc brake system, complete with an anti-lock feature, performed to expectation. The stops are strong and linear, averaging just 114 feet from 80k. The suspension is on the stiff side and is probably too firm for all but the most enthusiastic sports car fan. Having said that, the front seats are comfortable and the small amount of engine noise that does filter through is music to the ears. Wind and tyre noise have been kept to acceptable levels. We averaged a respectable 10.5 litres per 100 kilometres or 27 miles per gallon. For those who have a tendency to rest the gas pedal on the floor, I can guarantee you will not get this kind of mileage. The MX-3 is a very competent car that is enormous fun to drive, especially with the V6 motor. When so equipped, it gives some far more expensive cars a real good run for their money. The new Prelude is one that comes to mind.
Well, a guy like me is probably going to have a little more down-to-earth, beat-up toolkit, something like the one we've got here today. So let's unpack it and have a look at some of the things that a motorist should have in the trunk of his car, just in case he gets broken down.
Well, this car, of course, needs no introduction. It's a Jaguar. It's the 1992 XJS Coupe. It's got a 4-liter 6 under the hood. But what makes this particular car special is that it has a 5-speed manual transmission. And it's the first time in 17 years that Jag has sold a car in this country with a manual stick shift. Incidentally, the price tag is about $65,000. Okay, you've probably noticed the odd car commercial in this program. Well, what we're going to do now is take you behind the scenes to show you how car commercials are produced. And as you're about to see, commercials, like cars, have changed over the years.
This is the car that dreams are made of.
This is the way that many car commercials used to look. And in those days, the consumer had a limited choice of car manufacturers to choose from.
Dozens of options. But as standard equipment, you get bucket seats, wall-to-wall carpeting, all vinyl upholstery, padded instrument panel, and full wheel covers.
But today's car buyer is virtually overwhelmed with product choices. The domestic market share has been eroded by imports, and product loyalty is a thing of the past. This has resulted in a fiercely competitive marketplace as manufacturers battle for the consumer's attention. Many believe the way to achieve that goal is through TV commercials.
There is so much product available. There are so many different manufacturers. There are so many claims. You know, people make the statement that the average consumer is bombarded with literally thousands of messages a week in terms of different products that people want them to buy. And a car is a big decision, so people think about what they want to do. So I think that commercials are really important. They show the car in motion. You can't do it in any other way. If you a print ad or a newspaper ad, I mean, the car doesn't move. In radio, you can't even show it. So commercials are really important if you want to show people what your cars look like and give them some feeling of what it would be like to be in one of those cars or near one of those cars. So yes, they're really important to us.
Ian Forsythe is the marketing director for Nissan Canada. His company will spend over $20 million this year to advertise its cars and trucks. Today he is meeting with the company's advertising agency, Chayette Day Mojo, to discover how some of that money will be spent on a new television campaign.
I think if you're managing the process well with your clients rather than sort of surprising them as you sit across this sort of what can be a very adversarial kind of copy meeting where the client really has no sense of where the agency is coming from, you're really, in a sense, rolling the dice and hoping that you've guessed right about what's in the client's head.
In real-life situations, people lock their keys out, they've got flat tires, they've got transmission troubles, we've got overheating engines. We're going to have all that stuff, and we're going to show it because this is the way really you will buy. I know it's a little scary. We're even going to have a Nissan tow truck shown with big Nissan logos, you know, fixing a broken Nissan. Because this is the way people really, this is people's experience with cars.
Every 26 seconds, somebody gets a flat tire. Every 12 seconds, somebody's car breaks down in traffic. And at this very moment, somebody somewhere has locked their keys in their car.
And we will kind of swoop down by each problem. And so if there's a guy on a bridge, say, with a overheated engine, the car will kind of swoop down, see the thing. You'll kind of get a glimpse of his angst and his problem. And we believe that we'll gain a lot of credibility and empathy with the consumer by showing them their experience.
Better show me the spot.
Yeah, well, the way we're going to do this.
We believe that freedom of movement should be guaranteed to all people.
You know, hopefully we've done enough work, we've had enough review of research, that there's some common ground, that we're not really starting from opposite ends of the spectrum. I fully expect when I see the creative that it will be challenging. I mean, if I saw only things that I could kind of go, yeah, I would have done that, then I'm thinking they're maybe not doing their job. There should be really challenging thoughts some very different approaches, some unique ways of putting together the research to really to make the communication break through. Because after all, that's as important as stating what Nissan is. We want the communication to break through to the consumer. If they don't listen to it, it doesn't matter what I think of the commercial. It's, you know, what does the consumer think when they see it on TV?
The Nissan Satisfaction Commitment warranties because they're thinking about the future. And one of the most powerful engines in its class. Just because you're married doesn't mean you have to have a boring car.
This is the fun part for me. The hard part for me is, the most fun part for me is probably coming up with the idea. And that moment when the light bulb goes on, wow, that could be cool. That would be good on television. That solves the problem. That's the fun part for me. The pressure time for me is probably, you know, nursing it along and keeping it alive through all the different stages of the client and the back and forth. That's when it's, you know, the big meeting at the client when the president of Nissan says yay or nay. That's probably the pressure time for me.
Was Canada made for the Pathfinder, or vice versa?
Again, there's no question that media is more cluttered, people are busier, people have less time to spend with the media and more options to avoid advertising. So again, it comes to, yes, I think we have to work a lot harder to somehow intercept that process and really sort of grab them by the lapels and say, hey, pay attention to this one. So if that's the spirit of your question, yeah. I mean, it's always been hard. Is it getting harder? Yeah, I suppose it is.
Ooh, that's smart. I'll be back to tell you about this kind of accident next on Kenzie's Corner.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
No, he's going to stop. It's a red light. He's going to stop. He's not going to stop! The driver of this car survived this accident, but he woke up with some pretty sore ribs. Now, a side impact collision like this is one of the most dangerous types of accident. Obvious reason, there's not much to protect you. Even if you have your seatbelt on, well, it'll help you from being thrown around inside the car, but it's not going to save getting smashed from the side of it as it caves in on you. Even if this car had an airbag, it wouldn't even have gone off in this type of accident. So what are you supposed to do? Well, there isn't much you can do right now. But in a few years' time, there will be a new safety standard for side impact protection. Even now, cars like the Volvo have a much thicker padded armrest, which will help reduce the impact of this sort of accident. And in the Tokyo Motor Show a few weeks ago, there was a car that had an airbag in the door. It's only a prototype, but one of these years we're going to have protection like that. And the new Volkswagen Golf that was shown at the Frankfurt show a month or so ago already meets the new standard for 1994. These new safety standards will be too late to help the ribs of this driver, but they might be in time to save you for some serious injury. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, this week, the skyline of Toronto is our backdrop, but next week, we are going overseas to motor European style. So make sure you join us as we continue to bring you stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 92 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.